Mark Foster, thank you so much for meeting with me. Senior Vice President of IBM Global Services, Global Business Services. The way I've been kicking things off is I've been asking people I interviewed, what's your favorite hobby? What is your favorite movie? And what is your favorite food?
Okay, well, my favorite hobby is playing seven-a-side soccer.
Uh-huh.
So I'm a very keen seven-a-side soccer player, though very bad at playing
Uh-huh.
seven-a-side soccer. But no, that's what I do. So I play with a bunch of dads back at my son's school
Yeah,
whenever I can.
that's awesome. So seven sides, like usually five-a-side, isn't
Well,
it?
it's seven-a-side because we can't move that fast. If
Right, right. So
five-a-side is
cover more ground.
we need seven of us, otherwise we get too exhausted too quickly. So that's it. My favourite film is Lord of the Rings. It's also
Oh,
one of my
that's
favourite books as well. But
great choice.
and so Lord of the Rings is absolutely up there.
Yeah.
And my favourite food, which I'm about to have here actually, is pizza.
Oh, awesome.
So
Any
there we are.
particular type or
Pepperoni.
pepperoni?
There we go.
Nice, very New York. So you studied, I believe, a Master of Arts. Was it at the College of Oxford?
I have a degree, rather bizarrely, in ancient Greek, Latin, and ancient history from University College, Oxford. Yes.
Wow. Yes. So you
That's right.
must be big into history then.
I am in big in history, exactly. I'm trying to occasionally find ways to use my Latin and Greek in my current job, but I
Yeah.
find it's not quite so obvious
Yeah.
these
Right.
days.
What made you decide to choose that? Just may I ask?
It was the only thing I was good at.
Right. History.
No, seriously, I was I had inspirational teachers, like many people.
Yeah.
It all comes down to having someone who inspires you to do something, and I
Mhm.
was lucky enough to have a couple of really inspirational people, who, by the way, I'm still in contact with, even though they're now both of them into their
Yeah.
80s and 90s, who absolutely inspired me to love those languages, love that history, and really engage
So
with it.
you really do develop that deep connection with someone that has sort of mentored you through
Yes,
something
yes.
that sort of lasts forever. I understand that you then took your first role after that was at Accenture.
Yeah.
And would you be able to sort of briefly touch through
Well, I was
your
obviously
career?
it's very hard to do it briefly.
I know it goes
It was
27 years. Yes,
27 years is hard to do
it's
briefly.
hard. Yes,
It's hard, but actually, but the key thing there was, I mean, the good thing about that was I was lucky enough to be in the organisation that started off as Arthur Andersen Management Consulting,
yeah.
became Andersen Consulting, and then became Accenture. And over those 27 years, obviously, was part of the building of a really amazing organisation that went from relatively small to being by the time I left, several hundred
Huge.
thousands of people. And being involved with that as a leader over that whole transformation was just a unique privilege. And obviously, I learned a ton about that, and I had various roles, culminating in running all of the retail, consumer, health, and life sciences and industrial space for 5 years, and then finally running all of management consulting globally for them. So no, a really fantastic ride. Learned a lot, and still have lots of friends over there.
Yeah, I'm sure you would over that span of time. And then you took quite a change in career after that. You joined the UK government.
Well, I did. I actually retired in 2011.
Oh, wow.
So I retired in 2011 on the basis that I was tired out.
Yeah.
To retire after 27 years. No,
Yeah.
but also just wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
And no, I joined a few boards, but the main thing, as I say, I was lucky.
Six, wasn't it?
I was four boards.
Four,
Boards.
okay.
I joined four boards, but I was also appointed one of the three people to oversee the UK's aid budget, which is 12 billion a year they spend on aid. They had just, in fact, protected that budget at the time of austerity and everything else that was being spent. So they wanted an independent watchdog to make sure the government was spending the money wisely. So I spent the next 4 years travelling to all of the far-flung places like Somalia, the Congo, across Africa, across Asia, sitting under trees, in villages, in clinics, in people's huts and houses, talking to them about whether or not the things we were trying to do for them would make a difference
Was
in their
actually
lives or
helping
not.
them. That must have been quite rewarding, I imagine.
Very rewarding and hugely humbling, and just learned a ton about the world, of course, through that. And then also had the experience of then coming back and talking about it in Parliament and actually explaining to the taxpayer whether or not it was all working or not.
That would give you such a different lens on life, I suppose, going through that experience.
Well, I think both the starting point of my background with my long view of history and the arts and that experience, I think, are two things that give me slightly more perspective than perhaps the narrow day-to-day thinking around either a particular technology or a particular project or a particular moment in time or quarter. You have to think over a slightly longer term to make change happen and understand what people are going through. And I think that perspective I find is something I draw upon all the time.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And then how did you come to join IBM?
surprisingly, I think is
Yeah,
the first word I would
surprisingly,
use.
yeah.
I'd say insofar as
Just sort of
I had
stumbled
no,
into it.
I hadn't. I mean, after 5.5 years of doing pretty much anything else apart from full
Yeah,
time working,
yeah.
it wasn't part of on my plan to plunge back into it. But to be honest with you, the call came through, and I had a set of very exciting and interesting conversations with Ginny, and
Hmm.
within a month, I'd turned my life upside down. I'd stepped off all these boards. I'd moved my wife and I over to the US, and I'd taken on running a 130,000 person, $17 billion thing. So it was a big,
Size of a small city.
a big deal.
Yeah.
But actually one that I haven't at all regretted. I mean, I've been on an amazing learning curve.
Hmm.
I've had to plunge back into all these new technologies, whether it's AI, quantum,
Mm.
blockchain, the whole world of this change that's out there. And I thought it would be exciting, but it's the only thing. It's outliving those expectations.
That's awesome. I suppose it's a good time to come back, I think.
So this is a really important inflection point. I mean, I've spent my time here at Think really talking about
Mm.
this is one of those moments in time when
Hmm.
technology kind of comes together, it converges at scale, it
Hmm.
makes a really big difference to whether or not you're going to be able to transform your business. And this whole idea of the cognitive enterprise we've created
Mm.
is really our thought leadership around what that means for our clients.
There's funny. Out of everyone I've interviewed, everyone also believes we really are on that elbow of exponential growth in technology right now. Like
Yes.
that's where we've really entered, and it's really about to take off. It's exciting. What would you say the most rewarding part about your current role is now?
Oh, it's quite simply, it's meeting all the people.
Hmm.
I mean, this is a fantastic opportunity to work with, obviously the 130,000 people in GBS, but now also
Yeah.
increasingly touching the 120,000 people in GTS. But more importantly, the huge breadth of talent across an organisation like IBM. And in the end, the thing that always excited me about all the leadership roles I've been fortunate enough to have over my life has been I just like being around groups of people,
People.
trying to inspire them, trying to learn from them, and that was something that I was actually missing in my
Yeah.
in my 5.5 years of being retired, and so I'm glad to be kind of back in the middle of all that again.
Yeah, that's awesome. I suppose that's one of the reasons I've reached out to you as well to sort of help inspire some of the younger community
Yeah.
back in Australia and New Zealand. Um, when you look back on your career, I suppose once you retire for maybe the second or perhaps the third, I'm not sure what what you've got in plan. But when it's done and you're looking back on your career, what would be the one thing that you'd be able to look back and say that you did?
Sure. Um, Interesting enough, I mean, I think that I would like to think that I, again, like I talked about being inspired by those teachers who taught me and sort of
Hmm.
set me on this path. I'd like to think that I can look back and that there are people that I have managed to touch or who engage with
Yeah.
who feel similarly inspired and have gone on to have careers that I hope will surpass mine as
Hmm.
well. I mean, I think that's really the most important thing. I will say also, it's interesting. There are lots of things in life. Of course, my work is important,
Hmm.
and those jobs have been big. But actually, of course, I'm hugely proud of my family and my kids and my wife,
Yes.
and I'm also proud that the last 25 years I've actually helped to run and operate a small village school, which has and kept it
Wow.
going, and that's those sort of things. Frankly, I probably hope I'm more remembered from that than I am for the fact I ran a big chunk of IBM at some point.
Yeah, well, that segues perfectly. It's like you knew my next question. But something I did look at your blog before coming, and I see you're quite an avid blogger. It seems that outside of work, you've really had a full balanced life. With friends and family, with your sports, your history, and
Mm.
photography. You travel. You have all of these other aspects of your life, these other pillars of your life that you draw happiness from. Um, how do you go about throughout your career balancing all of those? What did you find work specifically for
No, I
you?
think it's a great point, and I do think first of all I do think it's important to have these other things. I
Hmm.
believe all of us need to have a broad range of things that are interesting us. Keep that balance in what we're
Hmm.
doing. If we all become narrow, it's bad for us and it's bad for the people around us.
Hmm.
For me, I think it's around. I actually do need to you do need to compartmentalize it.
Hmm.
You also need to plan it. It's not something that happens just by happenstance. One of the things that actually came out from me having written a monthly blog now, pretty
Yes.
much for every month since in fact 2002,
How
is
many blog posts do you have on there, by the way?
actually, the ones that are actually out publicly are the
Yeah.
only ones that happened while I was retired.
Wow.
But there were I had an internal blog
For
for,
IBM as
for
well.
for
Oh,
Accenture,
for Essential,
and then
yeah.
I had an internal blog here now for obviously for Postmark here
Yeah.
inside here. So I sadly can look back and work out what I was doing every month over that long period of time. But more importantly, I've talked about this. because I'm going to do it, it makes me think about whether the next month is going to be interesting enough
Mm-hmm.
to have something to write about.
Yeah.
And that talks to a little bit about making sure that you are
Planning
and at least a balance of things.
things. Mm-hmm.
And and I think that's something we can all do.
Yeah.
Sometimes, of course, the work swings to being a bit more than that. But I think it's a lot of it's actually much more of it's in your own hands
Mm-hmm.
than you realise, and a lot of it is about making some choices, being deliberate and planful. And I think if you do that, then there's a decent chance of it working out.
That's awesome. Um, if you could go back and perhaps speak to a younger version of yourself, what would be the advice that you would give to yourself?
I just think keep on trying, keep on pushing on. I mean, I think that the key thing about all of this stuff is that first of all, I don't think you actually talking about having been planful. The one thing you can't be planful about is actually where your career and work is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
I had no expectation I'd be doing this right now at
Yeah.
all. Even a couple of years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I had no expectation at any point in my time in my career with Accenture that I was going to have the next job I was going to get through that time.
Mm-hmm.
All I was focused on was trying to enjoy what I was doing at the moment in time, try and do a good job at what I was doing at the moment in time, and try and take whatever I was doing and slightly push the boundaries if I could to either see an adjacent area, something else that might interest me. And I think that keeping up that curiosity, keeping up that sense of do a good job, but also think about what's out, exploring something new, a bit adjacent.
Yeah.
I think that has stood me in good stead, and it's something that even now I still draw on all the time.
That's really good advice. Um, if you could recommend one book to somebody, and it can't be your blog or your series of blogs, what would what would be the book that you would recommend?
The book that I recommend is A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson.
Okay.
It's a great book that makes us all realise how we sit in the universe, and at one level how insignificant we are, but also at one level how amazing we are.
Yeah, it's but that feeling when you go through those exercises of putting everything into perspective can be very humbling.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mark, thank you so much for your time.
It was a pleasure, Carl. Great to meet
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Super.
Yeah.